What's going on, guys? So I got a real car project again. If you've been with the channel for a while, you remember I used to have a 2003 Silverado. It was a 1500 HD. It was kind of a unique truck, a heavy half ton, if you will, and did a bunch of stuff to it, just fixing it up. I didn't customize it or do anything crazy. And right after I quit my job and started doing YouTube full time, I got rid of it. After I sold my house and moved, and I was like, I don't need two cars. Well, here we are again. So I just picked up a 2003 Chevy Suburban 2500. So it is not a 1500 HD. It's a little bit more than that. And just like everything that's 21 years old at this point, it needs a little bit of work. So yeah, I'm just going to do these videos for fun. There are links to all the parts I use. I get a lot of stuff on Amazon. I did that on the last truck. I went through probably on that one. It was a cat eye. I went through probably 3 sets of headlights before I found some that weren't garbage. So in the description, there's a link to my Amazon store, and I'll have a folder for the Suburban and everything that I got on Amazon. And yeah, so follow along. All right, so the first problem to tackle here, the oil pressure gauge is maxed out. My other truck did this once to me on the way home from work. It's typically just a sign of a failed sensor. If it was all the way down to 0, I'd been a little more worried, but having it maxed out wasn't too bad. So these are a nightmare to get to. The books and everything say to remove the intake. It's way down in the back. A horrible location. You had to have a special socket and a couple swivels to get that out. Checking what pin connector we've got. I did pick this part up at O'Reilly's. They have these on Amazon and eBay. I'm just scared of a $12 sensor off of Amazon. You can see there how dirty it was. Tried to clean up the surface as best I could and get that thing back in. Oil pressure is luckily perfect, and we can continue on with building this truck. I am having a problem with the gauges skitzing out a little bit, so I'm going to have to send the cluster off to get rebuilt, but still haven't taken care of that just yet. But got good oil pressure, so that's a good place to start. Alright, so the next issue, the power window switch, of course. The windows worked, but the mirror fold-in thing, it would fold in and it would not fold out. Sometimes it would work when it was selected on one side or another. So I had to replace this. Now this was my first time having a door, the trim piece that wasn't broken. So of course I broke the screw. You're supposed to actually take the door panel off. Apparently there's a screw that comes up from underneath and holds the front end of that piece in. I've got a really good fix for that, and we'll do that here in a minute after I finish breaking this one. Every one of these, I've had 6 or 7 of these GMT 800s, and they've always been broken. And this one was actually in really good shape. My passenger side was broken, I found out, but a lot of wires disconnect inside of here. It would have been a good time to go ahead and do the power seat control thing, but I'd wait and do that later. See, we've got the green connector actually, I think it's the green or the blue actually goes to the power seat connector right above it. So, try this piece out. This one, I try to buy middle of the road on Amazon, not the $60 ones, not the $180 ones. Try to get the one that was around $100 bucks. There's a link to that below. It works well, and the buttons and stuff are all clean and nice looking. So, wasn't an issue. Came with a little tool to try to pry all these things out. The original pieces say Nokia on them. It reminds me of the 80s cell phones. Alright, so we're going to glue this back on. Got some JB plastic weld type stuff. I'm going to put the screw in about the depth that I think it needs to be to catch the piece on the door panel that holds it into place. Mixing up some JB weld, or plastic weld. Can't remember which brand that is. Stuff stinks to high heaven. Don't do that in an enclosed space. It took a while to set up. It says it's set up in 5 minutes. I had to hold the piece into place for quite a while to get it to actually stick. But it did hold well, and was able to get this all back on super tight, and it feels just like new. Still have the habit of my last truck. Every time I get out, I grab my thumb onto the window switch to hold it into place, and I don't have to do that in this one. I got it on there pretty sloppily, but it'll work. Just getting it to set up well, because it broke at a weird angle. It's kind of a pain. So for the truck side of it, instead of just having this hole, I'm just going to cut it into a slit so we can put the front in, plug everything in, and then the back will snap into place. Makes a lot more sense than having a screw that you can't get to without removing everything. So now we can easily access it later if we need to. This piece snaps back in. I cleaned all the plastic trim pieces up while I had them all apart as well. Took them inside, some warm dishwater, and did a little function test here before we lock it all into place. Making sure, still can't figure out exactly which way the button does what for the mirror fold. There it goes. Checking the windows. So now we just slide that screw up under the slit we made, and then the back will snap back into place. And yeah, works just as well. So didn't notice at the time I purchased there was no lenses on the fog lights. Got a decent set on Amazon. I don't know if it's a 2500 thing or what, but they were really difficult to get to. The screws go in from the inside of the bumper down. There's two, I think they were 10 millimeters or something around that. And I had one hand through the hole where your tow hook would be. The other one just kind of wedged up there holding it down. Fought with it forever, just getting little quarter turns. I was using a 1/4-inch ratchet. It was just real crowded in there. I don't know if it's the 3/4 ton core support's bigger and hangs down in the way. This still has a standard front end, not a HD, so it doesn't have the different bumper from the other ones like the trucks did, later trucks. So to line up the new one, I'm just going straight off of the original, hoping they were right. Didn't look like they'd ever been out, so just lining it up that way, measuring the distance at the back for the spring. And it seems like they're lined up pretty good. I haven't really sat down and tried to straighten the fog lights, but I got the headlights and stuff pretty straight. We'll cover more of that later. That's the best way I can figure out how to do it, just lining them up back to back. Then going back in, same story, just fighting with the two little tiny screws from the top. That was working best. I don't know if you have tow hooks on yours, you may not be able to get your hand in there that direction. There's probably an easier way. I didn't have any of my 1/4-inch drive impact wouldn't fit in there or anything like that, my angle one. So it is what it is. These were absolutely cheap fog lights. They came with bulbs and connectors and everything, so wasn't a bad deal. Alright, so next up, I had to get it legal. Went and passed inspection, had to go get tags and all that. Everything was out, of course. Didn't have any issues even with the cracked windshield. Yeah, they're not super strict on that. Texas is actually about to do away with inspections altogether. So you just pretty much go pay a $7 ransom, and then you go to the courthouse and get your license plates. And I was missing everything up front for the license plates, so I found these little squares. I think I had these from my last truck. Get the plate mounted up and move on to the next thing. So someone had debadged this thing. There's nothing on the sides. It didn't have the LT badges. Would like to have left that off, but the passenger side, it took all the clear coat when they took it off. So just prepping the surface a little bit with some rubbing alcohol and trying to get these things lined up. This side will be easy to line up because there's no clear coat. I hate that. But it looks more stock that way. You still see a little peel around the edge. The other side looks good. Now it's time for that power seat control switch. That one just looked bad and I wanted to replace it. It still worked just fine, but these are tight to get out. Another piece you're probably supposed to take the door panel off for. I ended up breaking, the other one kind of fell apart in my hands as I finally got it out of there. And you can see the seat moving with the camera. I hit some memory buttons. Yeah, just kind of busted into pieces. That was the grain connector on the back of that. Luckily our door window switches are quick release now, so we can force it back up through there. You got to kind of pry the door panel out, get the wire in and out. It's a little tight. Again, another door panel off thing, what it's supposed to be. I did have an issue with this. Just couldn't get the fabric to tuck back underneath the front edge of it. I don't know, it just fit really tightly on the door panel. I'm doing some more tests there, checking the pedals, make sure everything's working. And yeah, I still haven't got that. I need to take it back out and actually like trim the fabric up a little bit. It doesn't look bad, you can't really see it, but it's just one of those little things like, no, don't put it back worse than what you found it in. You can see me trying to shove the fabric back under, but it is very, very tight. I didn't want to go. But anyway, give her a quick tank of seafoam. Our first fill up, about $90. This has a 34-gallon tank, I believe. So I've always run seafoam and everything. I don't know if it really helps or not, but it makes me feel good. So yeah, this stuff's gotten really expensive. I've seen it as much as $13 a can now. It used to be $4 or $5. So anyway, moving on to the inside. I still have a nice Ram phone mount. I like the Ram mount stuff. It's the same one I use on my four-wheeler. I have a whole category of ram mounts in the Amazon store. But yeah, this mount system uses their 1-inch ball. I discovered a hidden auxiliary cable, so I know my factory radio is aftermarket of some sort. But yeah, just cleaning up stuff. Every time I take a piece out, I take it in, wipe it down with alcohol, or take it in the house and soak it in the sink. This thing, using some grade 8 bolts to mount this thing in because that's all I had. Just drilling some holes on the side of there. That's where I had it on my last truck. It's a pretty good spot. It's far enough away from the driver that you don't hit your knee on it or anything. It's on the opposite side. And you can see it pretty good. And it's close to where the plugs are going to be for the new radio when I get to install it. Just tightening everything up. And should go back in the truck pretty easy. I'm planning on doing a whole like switch panel system. Somebody had already cut this unit out for a CB radio. It looked like there was some extra wires and stuff in the truck, and that section down below is gone. And there's some holes on the other side or some tape where somebody had hooked up a CB mic holder. So yeah, we'll clean that stuff up later and make some nice trim pieces to go with it. But like the Ram stuff, it holds it super good. It doesn't vibrate real bad down the road. Pretty good quality phone holder. It's kind of pricey, but you get what you pay for. Now, I tried to film how bad the exhaust drones. It had some dumped like Flowmasters on it. So I was on the way to the muffler shop, trying to get something a little quieter put on it. Yeah, it's not super quiet. Did get to see this cool square body while I was there though. Gorgeous truck. It toned it down some, not enough. I just discovered too that I have no catalytic converters, so that could contribute to the loudness. I got the big giant MagnaFlow put on it, so it's a little bit quieter. It's bearable right now, but it's still droning real bad. Next thing on the list, steering stabilizer. So a lot of these trucks, just like my 1500 HD, they have the provisions for one. This truck apparently never came with one from the factory, but it does have the mount. If you're looking to do this, make sure you have the mount on the tie rod end, or the drag link, I guess is the middle bar of your steering setup. Make sure it has a hole in it. They had the mount already on both pieces, so picked up a Bilstein, about $100. I went with Bilstein's 5100s on the shocks as well, on everything on this truck, because that's what I've always done. All my GMT 800s, I've run these. This being a 3/4 ton-ish, it didn't really improve the ride as much as I'd hoped, but we'll talk about the shocks more later. I had to get hardware because since that truck didn't have it, I didn't have the bolt for the end, so I picked a few different sizes. I think the final size was 2.5 inch, and get underneath, start putting it on. And this is a great time to check all of your cooler lines, which mine were leaking severely. My trans cooler is pretty wet. Power steering looks okay, but my oil cooler lines are about shot. Where these hard lines all go into soft lines, it just always comes apart. This looks like the soft lines are just sweating right now. So the oil cooler is leaking at the oil filter, which is very common on these. Definitely something you want to look into. It's not super expensive. The oil cooler lines are not terrible to change yourself either. We haven't got there yet though. Mine's not losing enough oil to show up on the dipstick, but it's leaving a little trail here and there. So just trying to compress this thing and not get covered in wet transmission fluid. It's a tight fit, but this actually made tremendous difference on this truck. This thing was wandering real bad on the highway. You pass an 18-wheeler, it'd blow you over into the shoulder. The seller even told me that when I bought it. So I did do two things. I did the steering stabilizer, and off camera you can adjust the set screw on the top of the steering box. Now I've done this on every one of them, half ton, my 1500 HD, and this one. It's a little bit of a challenge to get through. You got to kind of move your oil cooler lines up by the radiator to be able to get a tool on it. I didn't show it because it's impossible to film. You can barely get to it. But you crack that nut and you turn that Allen screw inside of it. They say a quarter turn. I went a little more on this one. I went about a half turn and tightened the jam nut back down. And that made the steering on this feel fantastic. They just get slop in them over time, I guess. And adding the steering stabilizer really brought this thing back to life. I've checked it, all the tie rods and things. I have my drag link arm, is the bushing on it's pretty well gone, but all of my tie rods and stuff look fantastic. So that's much better than some of these I've bought where everything was just kind of worn out and shot on it. All my ball joints and stuff look good. This is a two-wheel drive truck, so it makes doing a lot of this stuff a lot easier. It's the first two-wheel drive one I've actually had, and yeah, not having that front diff makes the oil cooler lines and all that stuff a lot easier to work with. Getting this top bolt on the stabilizer was a little bit tight. Not a whole lot of access up there, and but yeah, definitely worth it. Definitely made a difference in the handling. It's still not a canyon carver by any means. I've got a brand new or newer 22 GMC half-ton, and you know, this still drives like a 3/4 ton truck compared to that, but makes a world of difference. Next up, headlights. These weren't the worst I'd ever seen. A little bit of delamination. The fog lights, of course, or the blinker lights have water in them. Most of them do. I did the passenger side first, went flawless, and then of course I go to do the driver's side and film it, and everything was just fighting me along the way. I was happy to see when you do all these light changes, check all your pigtails. Especially the daytime running lights tend to melt, I guess, because they're on for so much time. Someone on this truck has disabled the daytime running lights. The relay in the box has an X on it, and yeah, I don't have any kind of daytime lights on it, which is not a big deal. So this one was fighting me a little bit to get back in. This truck doesn't have any signs of damage or a wreck. It's been pretty honest of a truck. And of course, it's a Texas truck. It's bought in the Dallas area, and yeah, I think it was two-owner. The original owner towed the camper with it, older couple from Oklahoma, and then East Texas, where it spent the last 5 or so years. So this is how I've always done headlights. Even though I'm not parked on level ground, I just line it up with something. It was almost dusk. Put some tape marks at the top of the beam, and we just align the new ones to it. And I'm glad we did, because the other ones, the new lights were quite a bit higher, so it would have been a lot of angry oncoming traffic. And again, the minute the camera came on, the headlight wouldn't line up. I couldn't get the pins back in. I don't know what the deal was with this side. These have that inner structure piece that goes on the core support that all the lights mount to, and I don't know if this one might have been cracked or something. It just, once it got in place, it would not line up. It took a little bit of fidgeting. Finally got it in there and got it to stay put. But of course, once the camera's on, these lights, again, I like the factory look. I don't get into all this trying to wire up LEDs and moving things in my headlights and stuff. On these older trucks, I just like them like they came. I just want it to look new and clean and factory. Finally, getting the pins in. I get the top part in, couldn't get the bottom part in. Took the light in and out 3 or 4 times. Then finally, it all just went into place. I tried force, tried cussing at it, tried all kinds of stuff. It just wasn't ready to go in its home. So, just using a drill to set the adjustment. Nice, quick, and easy. You can see here on the wall how quickly they move. You've got in and out and up and down. It didn't take but a second to get them lined up. Around to the passenger side. Probably not perfect. I don't know if there's anywhere that actually does headlight alignments anymore. It's not really a thing. Back when I worked at the Peterbilt factory, we had a machine. When the trucks would go in for tracking the suspension, they would align the headlights on the older ones. I don't know if anybody actually does that kind of stuff anymore. But got it all buttoned up, and the front of the truck looks a lot better now. It just makes a whole world of difference having new lights. Next up, I'm going to do some floor mats. I only got fronts. I don't have kids or passengers very often, so these were pretty nasty. I did the WeatherTechs again. I got the tan. They've actually improved. The last set of WeatherTechs I had were not that great. And these look fantastic. Both sides have the little red things that snap in to kind of lock it into the carpet. And yeah, they've been really nice so far. Just saved some money and got the front too. But yeah, the last set of them I had no kind of grip or anything on the bottom. They'd slide around. They'd get scuffed up with like white rock and things, and they would just not come off at all. So they've made some improvements or something, but looks pretty good. Matches close enough. This thing is all about 50 shades of tan and gray. They didn't have a whole lot of interior options back in this era. Some of the tans were the 99 to 02 were really tan, and they did away with that and kind of just went to a neutral gray tan color for quite a few years. But these fit good. They stay in place. Not disappointed with that at all. Next up, taillights. This weren't the worst I've ever had. A little bit of delamination, but I think these were only like 70 bucks on Amazon. They look fantastic, just stock OE. This is the first time I've ever done one on barn doors. And I did have a question. If anybody out there has barn doors and has had a hatch, are the barn doors louder, more road noise? It doesn't feel like there's any insulation in these barn doors at all. But it just seems very, very noisy, and I'm still fighting with that exhaust drone, so just looking for excuses. But these have a little clip above the screw hole, and you just kind of push it and it pops out, so doing it one person wasn't too bad. It kind of holds itself in place, and you can just pop it out. 2 screws each side. Again, all my wiring and stuff looked great on it. No issues with the connectors, and that just makes the truck look almost new again. Makes you not notice the dents and dings down the side. All right, so the next project was kind of a big one. Sunroof shade was just sagging and looking nasty. Watched some videos. There's a couple different styles, the way the sunroof attaches and the clips and the slides. Some of them don't have that. It was actually just 4 screws, and yeah, the sunroof comes out. Set it up top, and just got to pry the screen off the clips. You can see that fabric was not on there at all. It's not really the fabric that breaks down over time, it's the foam backing that headliner fabric has. And that's what's stuck to the cover screen itself now. I was messing with it. I got these rubber coated gloves, and it was actually coming off really, really easily. So I just spent about 10 minutes wiping this thing down with my hands, getting in all the cracks, getting all this fuzz off of it, vacuuming everything up, and getting it pretty clean enough. It's been up for about a week now in the Texas heat, and my new cover hasn't come down at all yet. So just working all this stuff out of that crack, that little divot in the edge all the way around, and yeah, getting it off of the piece itself. But just making sure I got every bit of it out of the way and don't want to glue any of this stuff down. I did do headliners back in the day, back in the late 90s. Used to do custom headliners with flames and things, so I'm not too scared to try this. I just used the 3M High Strength 90 aerosol. You can get it at Home Depot, most hardware stores. Using this Walmart seat cover. I use these for my scale RC cars to make seats out of, because seat covers nowadays are so thin and poor quality that it actually has a foam backing to it that they look like a scale seat cover. You scale it down to 1/10. But I went ahead and removed all the elastic off the edge of this cover because it was making it wrinkle up and needed to get it cut good. Just trimming the first layer off so we can get a good edge. Alright, so now we're just going to go ahead and glue it down, doing half at a time, working it into that groove around the edge. Again, that's a high strength 90 3M adhesive. I've had good luck with that stuff. I used to do all the entire headliners out of that with like tweed and silly stuff back in the day. But you want to get it on both sections and let it set up a little bit. And see, I'm checking it for tackiness, making sure it's gonna adhere. And trying to just do the front one thing at a time. Then we'll flip it over. I'm trying to trim up the edges so we don't get any wrinkles that come around the front. Trimming the edge all the way down to where it won't get in the way of any of the other sunroof mechanism. You have a very small little window. You can see the edge there at the bottom where it's notched to actually fit. You can kind of see where the clips go. I did have to come back later and trim the fabric off of that to get the clips around it because this fabric was a little bit thicker. And yeah, just needed to get those clips seated good to get it back in the track system in the truck itself. So spraying both sides of everything, kind of letting it tack up. Extra on the corners. Just doing one side at a time. That was something I used to always do as a kid. I'd sit there and try to do everything at once. Maximize efficiency, but never worked out very well. So just keep working it around until it fully sets up. You get at corners and you can fold it together, your sides, and then you can just kind of pull it up into a little Dorito shape and chop those off, and it kind of seals itself with the glue. Doing the other side the same way. Spent quite a bit of time on this. This clip was originally like 8-10 minutes. About how long I spent doing it, just working them, making sure they stay seated real nice, and trying not to get glue on my toolbox or my floor, because that stuff will not come off. I did spray my front of my toolbox with it. Going ahead and trying to cut out for the handle it's going to be a little bit of work to get that shoved back in there, but was able to get it in just fine. I didn't have to trim the whole thing out, and was able to make a really nice edge out of it. So, got the handle back into place. It'll clearly snap in. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Just had to make a little room for the backside clips. They just kind of slide around, and then the front actually snaps into place. I'm just checking all my edges. Let this thing set out in the sun a little bit. Hopes that it'll adhere really well. Now, this is where I went to put the clips back on and realized they won't go over the fabric. So I do have to take it back inside the shop. I just used a Dremel because the fabric was pretty well glued in those spots, and I just cut little squares out where the clips go. I did also, while I was up here, spray some, I used gun oil, any kind of silicone lubricant or thing like that in the track for the screen itself. These were easily pushed into place. I just set it on this cardboard box and mashed it down. They have a little bit of spring to them. It's kind of like a windshield wiper blade. And get all 4 of those on. But I did lubricate the track system, make it slide in and out really well on the truck. So this part was the biggest pain, just trying to get it all back in. You put the clips on, and it barely fits in between where they go. Fought with it for quite a while. Clips ended up coming off again, and back on again, and getting 2 on, and then 2 fell off, and just trying to force all this in there. It's a great shot of my elbow, but it is doable. I was kind of terrified, honestly, to take the sunroof out because we're looking at a 21-year-old truck. I was worried about the seal. I did mark the screw holes. I forgot to mention that. There's 4 screws. They are a Torx head that hold the sunroof into the sunroof mechanism, and I did use a white paint pen and make some ugly circles around the head of the bolt, so I get it pretty close to back where it was. But when you go to put the glass back in, you just want to make sure you set it in from the top, and you want to push it back up and put your screws on where it's flush with the roof of the truck. It's a little bit higher at the back than it is the front, and make sure it's even side to side, and that seal should do its job. It's just hard to do. You got to kind of trial and error, tighten it, go back outside on top, look at the flushness, estimate how much you need to raise it up. But I was able to get it in. Hasn't leaked yet. I did have to fight with the catch to make it pop out right there. It kept not wanting to come out, or it wouldn't come back. So it did take a little bit of fidgeting, but I got it to work just fine. Not perfect, but it's nice and improvement over what we had. All right, so that about wraps it up for this first part of fixing up this old Suburban. I don't know what it is about this generation truck. I just love these. I guess because they were new when I was kind of first becoming an adult. Graduated high school in 01, and these were the cat's meow back then. I love it. I wish it was a 4-wheel drive. Mine's just a 2-wheel drive. It's a 6-liter 4L80. The big blocks look cool. I hadn't really done a whole lot of research into those until I got this truck. And yeah, it's a different animal altogether, but it'll do what I need it to do. I need to tow some stuff. Not a whole lot, but it's just, I've got a little utility trailer and that little eco diesel that I've got in my new GMC. It's fantastic for fuel mileage, and it's terrible for towing. So that truck will serve my needs for what I do, traveling to events and going across the country. Upcoming trip to California for an RC event in a couple months. So now I can have this to drive around town, tinker with, something to fix on. I did go ahead and install a new grill. I got it on eBay. It's not the best quality. FedEx lost it for a week. It came from the Dallas area, and it ended up in Ohio and Illinois and Indiana, and finally back. Got a black bow tie to put on that new grill. Fitment was okay. It wasn't the best. The aftermarket stuff has just gotten bad, but it did come with all new clips, including the screw clips that go on the 4 corners of the grill itself. The side clips, one of the actual replacement ones that it came with, snapped, just broke. It was crumbled, poor quality. So I ended up luckily reused one of the stock grill ones. That I did install a radio. I go through Crutchfield. I used to do car stereo stuff back in the day, like back when I did headliners. I don't have the patience to do all that wiring anymore. I needed CarPlay. The factory radio had a hidden auxiliary connection. I didn't know it was one of those that's been hacked or whatever. But I get through Crutchfield. I spent like $300. Got the cheapest Boss Elite touchscreen radio. Came with a backup camera. I've not yet to install that because I'm pretty certain it didn't come with enough cable for the Suburban. So that's something we'll look at later. But it's great having CarPlay. I just use my phone for everything, so that's all I needed. Cheapest one I could get. They pre-wired the harness. All I had to do is go plug everything up, mount it in the truck, put it back together. So you can't beat that, especially for the price. So what else? I've still got a couple issues to deal with. Like I said, the trans cooler lines are sweating. My oil cooler line is leaking at the seal and sweating. I mean, the lines are not expensive. It's just a little bit of work. I don't have a great place to work where I'm living at right now. So it's not like my last videos with the truck. I had a shop, concrete floor and all that. So that's something we'll look into next. I've got to get the gauge cluster rebuilt. It started out, it was just the volt gauge kept going out, and I'd reset the battery and it would work. And then my temperature gauge is now going out, and it will not reset with the battery disconnect. So, and the more I drive it, the tachometer will kick up, and idle will be 5,000 RPM, and highway will be all the way on the speedometer. So, yeah, all those step motors are going out. I can't find anybody locally that does it. Everybody around here in the Dallas and East Texas area wants $250, and it's like, I don't want anything fancy. I don't need Cadillac chrome rings and all that junk. I just want it to work. I don't even care about LEDs. It'd just be nice to replace the factory bulbs. There's some guys on eBay doing it for 70 bucks. They've got great feedback. So that's where the route I'm going to go. I've taken it on one pretty good road trip, go see family in Louisiana, and it's a little warm. It was probably 93 out, and I was trying to idle with both air conditioners running. I sat in the car with the dog for about 30 minutes, and it started getting hot, and it felt like the fuel was hot. It started idling a little rough. So once we got moving on the highway, everything was fine. So I think that's not a huge issue. I think we've got the factory radiator and the factory condenser. The condenser is not the best looking. The AC kind of does the same thing. The AC works fantastic when you're driving, but if you stop at a stoplight for too long, it starts getting warm. So it may be time for an update on some of that. Do a coolant flush, replace the radiator, and do a condenser, do the inline filter for the Freon, and see if that fixes our issues. But otherwise it works fantastic. As long as you're moving, it's fine. That thing loves going on the highway. That road trip, not hauling anything, I got up to 14.2 miles per gallon, just back and forth to town, going to the post office every day. I'm getting around 13.6, which is to be expected. It does have 285s on it, which is not, I don't know what gearing that one has. I have to check and see. It's probably not the right combination, but it sure does look good. So anyway, that's where I'm at with it. Any advice on things to look for on these, comment below and let me know what you've experienced. Again, I don't have a whole lot of experience with the 3/4 ton Suburban, but I've got a lot of experience with the trucks and the regular Suburbans. So body wise and electronics wise, I'm pretty familiar with them. I know a lot of little ins and outs of that. I do have one major issue. It did not come with any key fobs, and I've been through every forum. I end up at the same place every time. I bought some Amazon ones, of course, because it didn't come with any, and I've gone through the process. You hold the door lock, turn the key, and it goes into programming mode. Mine immediately kicks out of programming mode. It goes 5 seconds and it kicks out of programming mode, honks the horn. Doesn't matter if you're pressing buttons or not, it does it at the same time every time. And I've been told that's a GM Tech 2 scanner fix only. You can only, it's like either it's got too many remotes programmed to it and it's locked out, or it's not receiving something. But I'm trying to figure out where the antenna is. And I know the TPMS antenna is in the passenger door module, which is the door locks, and mine doesn't have TPMS, and there's a spot in that lock mechanism where there's nothing. There's some solder points and there's nothing on it. So I know someone had been in the passenger door. I'm wondering if maybe they replaced that module with a used one, and that took away the antenna for the keyless entry. So when I go to programming mode, it doesn't pick up an antenna and it kicks it out. Or do I just need to get a Tech 2 scanner and do it that way? So let me know what you think about that. Like I said, I've been through every forums, everything back to when that truck was new, and 99.99% of the answers are check the batteries in the remote, which is not my problem at all. I've changed the batteries, I've tested batteries. It's the truck end. So I even talked to the dealer, and of course they want $150 just to hook it up to a Tech 2 and see if they could program my Amazon remotes, and if probably not, sell me a $50 one from them. So I can buy a Tech 2 scanner for around 400 bucks, or pay the dealer to do this. And another $200, I can have access to a scanner that I can do all kinds of stuff with this truck. So anyways, I'm gonna wrap it up here. I appreciate y'all watching. Check out the links in the Amazon store below to all these parts. And if you're looking to do anything with these old trucks, keep them on the road. Keep on keeping on. I'll see y'all on the next one.